Hello and welcome to Atheist Torah Study. Um, Today we're going to be looking at the book of Bamidbar. We're basically at the beginning of the fourth book of the Torah, the book of Numbers. And you'll notice right away that the feeling of the book changes. It changes from the bloodbath of Leviticus to the boring infinite landscape of numbers. So it kind of shifts from one kind of um one kind of painfully slow plodding text to another. And it has a lot of text in it that like I think that as an atheist you just look at it and your eyes glaze over. It's definitely one of those eyes glazing over texts. And it's also the kind of text that just makes you wonder, like, why on earth did people write this and read this for the last 2,300 years? And that's part of the fun of, for me, it's part of the fun of doing this because it gives me a chance to really ask questions about what's going on here. Why are people paying attention to this? So this text goes through this infinitely long census and it lists like all of the tribes and then all of the members of the tribes. And it talks about how many there are. It's basically a census. And then it goes through this long thing about the Levites and what the Levites' role is and who carries the tabernacle. And anyways, it's an interest it's a read for sure. It's a read. I think I'll wait to get into more of the atheist commentary as we get into the text, and I'll definitely be relying on the text more today than I usually do. Some days I spend more of the time just ranting and drashing, but I think today I'll just rely more on the text. But a few basic facts about Bamidbar before we start. This is Numbers 1 to 420. Bamidbar means in the wilderness, which is very poetic. I mean, so one of the commentaries that I had listened to when I was preparing to do my atheist Torah study today was um, somebody talked about the wilderness and how the wilderness is like a really rich metaphor for Judaism and for other religions too. I mean, it really is. I appreciate that. I mean, as somebody who I love the desert, and I totally understand how somebody might feel inspired to write a book or to feel some kind of deep sense of connection with the universe out in the desert, because the desert is it has this incredible feel to it. So, anyways, let's see. Yeah, that's enough about Bamidbar. There's a lot more in here. Oh yeah, the fire too. Yeah. One of the interesting things, hopefully I'll remember to get back to this later on. But one of the interesting things that I learned this week while studying for this Torah portion is the very deep connection between Zoroastrianism and Judaism. So, I kind of went down a rabbit hole this week with preparing for this. First of all, I just want to say that uh I'm an atheist, but atheists we don't really have like community very much. I mean, maybe there is some atheist community out there. I'm just not part of it. But my general experience with atheists is like we don't really have much in the way of community. Like we don't really have a lot of buildings that we can go to, and people are kind of afraid of the word atheist, which is really unfortunate. I mean, it's really unfortunate that people are afraid of the word atheist because it's a very nice word, and it just describes a certain way of being in the world. It just means that, it's like without theism. So it's not really. But anyways, so as I was reading Bamidbar this week, I thought, well, I should really, as I do these more, I should really try to have an atheist lexicon that I can refer to, like a set of origins for atheism. And I realized that I didn't really understand the origins of atheism all that well. I mean, I've always known that I was an atheist, but I mean, I've known I was an atheist since I was in my late teens, but I never thought about, well, what's the history of atheism? Because I mean, when you talk about the wilderness, I mean, the wilderness is like in Jewish tradition, the wilderness is like this place that's really ripe. It's a ripe place for creativity and for spirituality and for introspection and for discovery. And I mean, I can see how at least the idea of the oh, the idea of the wilderness can be that way. I could definitely see that. Um, so where I was going with that thought was that the idea of the wilderness, and it's not just the wilderness though. I mean, that's not really good enough for describing the idea, because I think that this is one of those places where the idea of God, the idea of the universe, the idea of the self, and the idea of nature, like all kind of blend in the same kind of place. And I mean, as atheists, we're going to kind of push out the God. We're going to be like, okay, the God, you can go over there, go hang out with the goats. We're not going to do that. But we are going to look at the wilderness and see what we can see. And that's where everything comes from. I mean, the well, it doesn't just come from there, it comes from the university too, and but there's something in people's imagination and their unique imagination that when they're able to be in a place of genuine self-reflection, but also kind of connected with nature in a way, connected with the idea of the natural world, that is really profound. And one of the problems with the text, I mean, and we'll get into this in Bamidbar in just a minute, but one of the problems that we always encounter with the text as atheists is that the Torah and all sacred texts, this is kind of the beginning point. This week I was kind of reading about I was reading about kind of the origins of atheism. And as far as I can tell, in the Western canon, atheism, as it's really understood today, was first kind of put forward by Democritus. Democritus was a Greek philosopher from the Greek philosophy schools. And then it was also taken up by Epicurus. And I'm looking forward to learning about Democritus and Epicurus because I remember studying them in high school, but I don't remember studying them from an atheist perspective. So, um, anyways, uh, and so that's kind of the origin point of atheism. And even though it's not really part of this text, one of the really interesting things that I keep on finding in the text is how there are so many theories right now floating around, mostly circulated by the mythicists, that, but based on um, a lot of good, a lot of good archaeological evidence and speculation. That these texts, a lot of the texts in the Torah, in the Tanakh, could possibly be as old as the Hellenistic period. And it's just interesting that something that Jewish identity for so long has tried to absolutely distance itself from in terms of Hellenism could also be so foundational to the development of this text. I mean, I really believe that this text was uh, primarily a Hasmonean composition, and that even though the text spends so much of its energy pushing against Hellenism and pushing against, I think this text is really very honestly, very deeply aware of even like um, Roman. It's not just aware of. I mean, the text is very clearly aware of Egyptian. It's very clearly aware of the Egyptian. But I think it's, even though it doesn't say it, I think that it acknowledges the Roman period that's kind of on the ascent at this time. Uh, Although that, like, I mean, this is this is during this, what is it, the Seleucid period? I think that's the word for it, the Seleucid period. And so the text is really concerned with kind of defining itself against Hellenism. And, I mean, Hellenism is simply uh, the latest thing. It's also pushing against Assyrian, Babylonian, Egyptian. I mean, in so many ways, the text is a testament against empire, and yet it's also sort of the internalization of empire. I mean, it's like it's taking, and by pushing against empire and also by the internalization of empire, it's also showing the very deep-rooted connection between it's showing the very deeply rooted connection between the idea of the text as the construction of a divinity and the idea of the text as the relationship between a divinity and nationalism, national identity. So, I mean, the text is working in that way. It's actually reinforcing the idea that uh, a very that's not the word there is nationalism, but we will definitely find a lot of nationalism here in Bamidbar. Um, in a way, Bamidbar is actually the very essence of what, not nationalism, but like tribal or some kind of group identity means. It's intensely patriarchal. It is militaristic. Here, though, it's not really putting it as militarism. It's putting it as a covenant, as group identity. So, but all of these ideas, they're so fluid. They all run into each other. I mean, and that's the problem with a word. One of the problems with words is that a word is like quantum particles. It's like a particle and an antiparticle. You can't have the one without the other. I mean, there's so many words that don't mean anything unless they're also reflected in the absence of the word. I mean, like, and the words they stick to each other too. So you say one word and it has like 20 other things that stick to it. Um, and the Torah is really clever with that. That's one of the things, I mean, as an atheist, I really appreciate that about the Torah because it has some of these kind of sticky words, like where you have this one idea, and then the idea itself intuitively seems to lead in like 20 different directions. And those 20 different directions come back to that same idea too. So, it's something about the stickiness of words and their associative properties, that I think that's part of why the Torah is still kind of interesting. I mean, it's very interesting. And I mean, so even though the text, I mean, I really believe the text was redacted in the Hasmonean era. I think this is definitely a text deeply influenced by Hellenism, even though it like makes such dramatic efforts to separate itself from Hellenism, but it's also a text that's rooted in its time period. And in its time period, it's also reaching back really to the very beginning of recorded history in the West. I mean, it's, and part of that's because recorded history in the West doesn't really go back that far. I mean, to be honest, it's like, I mean, we think we're so great and we think we have this amazing history as a species, but I mean, we've really done a lot as a species since Western, not just Western. I shouldn't just talk about Western history. I'm starting to sound imperialist. Never mind. We think we're really clever, but I mean, and we are, but I mean, our history in terms of writing really only goes back about 5,000 years. So 5,000 years, it's not really that long. I mean, it's long for us because we only live like, 50 or 100 years. So that's a lot longer than we live. But now that we understand something about the nature of time and the nature of evolution, 5,000 years is just, it's really nothing. I mean, in a way, writing could be like our genetic variation, the thing that makes us distinct. And it's a very new variation. And it could be that writing is actually a really deadly variation in a species. We may find that writing and the ability to communicate the way that we do is actually what causes our extinction. So who knows? Anyway, so, this text, it's about a lot. It's about nationalism. It's about group identity. And it has a lot of ties to really ancient traditions. I mean, it's very, especially here in Numbers, I think I find it more in Numbers than maybe I do in Leviticus, but maybe I should see it in Leviticus too. But in Numbers, I really see the connections in the text between Judaism and Zoroastrianism really clearly. I mean, I think that I really have no doubt that Zoroastrianism had a significant influence on Judaism. I mean, I think that the idea of fire and the idea that there's a benevolent, good divine being, but also that there's this evil, there's the cause of evil, which I think that the idea of evil comes from the Zoroastrian tradition, and over time it becomes incorporated in the text. It becomes kind of an undercurrent. It's definitely something that's um, feeding the text. So when I was preparing to study for Bamidbar this week, I got on so many tangents. And it's so fascinating. I mean, one of the things I love about studying these texts as an atheist is that I get to go in all kinds of different directions. So, like I said, this week I went down an exploration of the origins of atheism so that in the future I'll be able to better discuss and understand kind of my own atheist ancestors because I really didn't know my atheist ancestors very well. And I'm just starting to learn them. So, I mean, in terms of like, I mean, I've always intuitively kind of known I'm an atheist, but like, I mean, I've never really, I don't know, it's like I've never really spent a lot of time studying atheism as a discipline in and of itself. And doing these Torah commentaries has really got me doing that. But the other thing that this Torah commentaries have really got me doing is like really looking at the text itself as a Jew and really getting to explore like the archaeology of the text in so many ways because people are really fascinated with this text because this text is like, it's not just in the Chumash, it's not just in the Tanakh, it's in the Old Testament, and so Christians just love thinking about this text too, and they're always writing about it. And then of course all the people who like were Christians and then they became humanists and atheists and archaeologists and scientists, the ones who are curious about it, like they write about the text too. So there's a lot of content out there. There's a lot of scholarship that like is really helpful if you want to try to understand all of the different places this text comes from. I mean, and I've already said it earlier, but I mean, this text it's it's Egyptian, it's Babylonian, it's Assyrian, it's influenced by Zoroastrianism, it's polytheistic. It's it's kind of a it's I think I think this is really all the last thing I want to say, and then I really do want to start to read the text. But I think that there's I'm sorry that I keep on referring to the West. I mean, there's so many other important cultural traditions in the world besides the West. But this text is definitely rooted in, although so my rabbi, you know, um, one of the things I learned from her, and I need to stop saying the West all the time, but like my rabbi really understood how this text is a bridge between the West and the East, because it's actually written in a place where the two kind of traditions, the West and the East, really talk to each other a lot, because it came from a place where they talk to each other a lot. But, oh, excuse me. Even though, I mean, I think that when I say the West, like some people think the West means, oh, I don't know, England, European tradition, the Magna Carta, the rights of man, Christianity, I don't know, rational, the Renaissance, I don't know. Like I think for most people, they think that's the West, the origins of the West. Especially here in America. But like when I think of the West, like to me, the West is like it's like Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, those are all not quite as far as India. I mean, when I think of like India, South Asia, China, Siberia, Central Asia, I mean, to me, that's like the East. Like those traditions talk to each other a lot more. Some of them, like especially when you start getting into like India, Central Asia, those traditions definitely talk to the West some. They definitely did. But like to me, when I'm thinking about the West, I'm really thinking about the places that are kind of the origins of the monotheistic traditions, because that's what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the Torah. And even though like each monotheistic tradition is its own identity, like I mean, I'm so much better now at understanding after doing this particular exercise of doing an atheist Torah study for it's been about 6 months now, but doing this particular tradition of atheist Torah study, I really see how the gods are very different, the monotheistic gods of the Jew and the Christian and the Muslim, like each one is kind of a very different sort of monotheistic God. Um, I mean but they're all kind of the same monotheism too. Like each one is still this monotheism. And oh yeah, this was one of the things I wanted to say from earlier. So one of the ideas that I really came to see so much clearer this week while I was studying for this Torah portion was, I mean, I kept on wondering like where does the God what's the so like one of the things I wonder is okay, what's the point of monotheism? I mean, as an atheist, you have to really think about this. What is the point of monotheism? I mean, as an atheist, I say there is no God. There's never been any God. So you can have as many gods as you want because they're all the same thing. It's all nothing. So that's what I say as an atheist. But regardless of whether I say that as an atheist, people are still making gods, And what are they doing? Like, what exactly are they doing when they make a god? That because that's what I'm really wondering. That's that's really the whole point of this. That's the whole point of why I'm doing this, is because I'm like, what is the God that they're making? And what does it mean? Because I don't think you can just say as I mean, you can do whatever you want, but like for me, I can't just say as an atheist, oh, there's no God. Screw you guys, I'm going home. I can't do that because I'm surrounded by gods that people believe in that are directly affecting my life. I mean, in the most personal ways, they affect my life as a transgender woman. They affect my safety. They've already tried to colonize my brain. My entire life has been an attempt at decolonization of religion, just trying to find like, well, they decolonized my brain, so now what's in there? Like if I try to they colonize my brain. So if I try to decolonize my brain of this, then what's in there? And I've discovered that you really can't do that. I mean, there's just this unfortunate thing about brains, like you can't go back to this blank slate, where your brain wasn't already formed by Western monotheism. If you're lucky enough not to have a brain that was fundamentally shaped by Western monotheism, then that's good for you, enjoy it, because most of us aren't so lucky. Um, but even if you do have a brain that wasn't fundamentally shaped by Western monotheism, like everything about you is still shaped by Western monotheism because it's been foundational to everything. It's foundational to nationalism, to property rights, to the categorization of people. It's just Western monotheism as it was adopted by different empires is foundational to Western identity. And I mean, you really can't have the West as we understand it today without Western monotheism because it's just like the sea that you swim in. It's shaped everything. And the first thing that really successfully within it really pushed away against it was science. Science and the scientific tradition was the first thing to really escape from that web of Western monotheism that kind of enmeshes like almost all of Western culture. And it's been a plague. I mean, it's really been a plague. I just don't know how else to say it. I mean, we have these conscious, literate human beings who have a capacity to create anything that their conscious, literate minds can create. And we've been infected by this virus of Western monotheism that's basically infected like all of the nations that it's come in contact with and all of their descendants. And it just keeps on circulating and circulating and circulating, and it doesn't go anywhere. And it gets into everything. It gets into the law, it gets into interpersonal relationships, it gets into people's own self-conception of themselves and what their purpose is and how they're going to exist. And the Torah is just one template for how to create this entire blueprint for how to like completely brainwash a species, make them basically subjects to this template that was created by people, you know, thousands of years ago who didn't have any concept of the future or what the future would be. I mean, they're really interested in their particular time period and creating a mythology that like works for them in their own time period. And here we are still carrying it around thousands of years later, just different variations on it. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, they're all variations on the same kind of model for how to construct a religious state, basically. And science, like I said, science was really the first thing that really broke away from it. It's there's probably other things that are going to break away from it too. But and science was the first one to just I mean, I would say government or revolution, but it's like when you think about things like the French Revolution, I mean, the French Revolution was pushing away against tyranny, but it was also it's like it's like you have this one extreme and then you have this push against it. And it's like that's not really science. Like science is this completely new thing. It's not really new. I mean, people have been using scientific like style processes for a long time, but it's this thing that just completely moved away from the back and forth because like I mean government is still and even when government is just completely detaching itself like the Russian Revolution is still like it's a reaction against, it's not like its own thing, it's not like something new. Science was something very new. Anyways, what I was trying to get at a minute ago when I was talking about these ideas of God is that so you sit around and you look at, the development of God in the Western tradition. So you look at, what were all these different ideas about God that these people had in the ancient world? I mean, and the Torah itself preserves the memory of all these different gods too. I mean, here in the book of Numbers, we're going to get into talking about Baal, and we're going to talk about some of the other gods. And these gods come from a Western canon that was, you know, pantheistic, it was polytheistic, and I mean, it wasn't really monotheistic because monotheism isn't just about worshiping a god. Monotheism is everything about the culture. Monotheism is about the culture, and it has something to do with how the culture organizes itself. I mean, it's not just about the god because it's like you can say, oh, there's no God but God. But what does that mean? I mean, as an atheist, like I said, for like I was saying a minute ago, I mean, for me as an atheist, that doesn't mean anything because I mean, it kind of does in a way. I mean, when you say there's no God but God, there's no God. This is what Democritus was getting at. It's like you and foundationally, like in Western philosophy, that just gets to this idea that there's there's only the material world. There's only the material universe. There is no God because gods are supernatural and supernatural things don't happen in the natural world. And we've like scrubbed the universe looking at it. We know that we've already scrubbed this planet, we've scrubbed this solar system. We didn't find any gods anywhere, you know, but we did find a universe full of magic and just full of amazing things. But we didn't find any gods anywhere. And since we know, I mean, we absolutely know that the laws of nature are the same everywhere. This was one of the great foundational, really, I think like probably, I don't know who said that the laws of nature are the same everywhere. I don't know if it was Isaac Newton or someone from around that time period, but whoever figured that out, That's probably the most significant, one of the most significant ideas in human history. Because, I mean, now we understand it, we take it for granted, you know. I mean, we live in a materialistic universe, and so this is part of why we're so curious about life in the universe, because we know that if life evolved here, then it could evolve anywhere. And that makes us feel hopeful. And it's only been in the last century that we've actually proven that there's planets. I mean, we kind of already intuitively knew that there were planets in other places, but part of science is like you actually look at things and you prove them. I mean, it could be that we're the only solar system in the universe that had planets, and for some reason none of the other solar systems have planets, but we've discovered, yeah, there's planets. And anyways, where I was going with this was that, going back to the idea of gods, I mean, but the problem with when you take the scientific method and when you take Western philosophy and you begin to deconstruct these ideas, so you have this idea about God that is fa foundationally rooted in Western mythology, but you're looking at it through the eyes of the philosophical tradition of materialism. So you're looking at God from a materialistic perspective and critiquing the God or the gods from a materialistic perspective of Western hegemony. But you don't, it gets you confused. So this is kind of the territory that I'm in as an atheist Jew who's commenting on a religious text. I mean, it's really easy to slide into one camp or the other and to be like, okay, you're an atheist, so everything that I'm going to deconstruct here is going to be from the perspective of atheism. But then the other side is like you're looking at it through the lens of Jewish tradition. And so everything here is informed by Jewish tradition. But those two really, they don't they don't blend really well. I mean, there's not a lot of atheists in the Torah. We're going to be coming up in this parsha, in this book, on like one of my favorite characters in the Torah, which is Korach. And I'm a big fan of Korach because Korach was a dissenter, and he had a different idea about how things should be. And of course, what happened to Korach and all the people who followed Korach was that he was swallowed up by the earth and, sent down to Sheol. So, which is a great place. Like, I think that's where all of us dissenters are. I think anybody who, has some different idea, like we all pretty much get sent to Sheol. And it's not just in the Torah. I think that happens to us like throughout human history, basically. We kind of get sent down to Sheol. So there must be a lot of really interesting people down there. So I'm looking forward to it when I get there. Anyways, okay. So I said I was going to spend most of my time commenting on the text, and then I just went on this like this rant, or I'm not sure what it was. I just started babbling, and I've just babbled for, I think I know exactly, I just babbled for 37 minutes. So now I only have 23 minutes to do the text, but I'll try to get through. You know what I'll do? I'll jump around in the text a little bit. Okay, so we're going to start here. Bamidbar Numbers, chapter 1. And we'll start there, but we'll jump back and forth through some of the chapters. Uh, Parsha Bamidbar is just 1 through 4. So yeah, in like 22 minutes, I'll jump through a few chapters so that we can just kind of get a feel for the text. On the first day of the second month in the second year after the exodus from the land of Egypt, God spoke to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai, the tent of meeting, saying, "Take a census of the whole Israelite community by the clans of its ancestral houses, listing the names, every male, head by head." Okay, so I don't know how much, I'm probably not going to get to very much of the text. Oh well, that's okay. That's a good thing. Okay, so so I didn't place this at the beginning of the story. So where are we in the story of the Torah? And this is part of why this. I mean, I think that what somebody's trying to do here with the Torah is in the Hasmonean era, they haven't gotten a lot of models for how to write a novel or how to do a timeline. Like they don't have they haven't really plotted out their timeline very well. So, um, just in case you don't realize where we are in the story, because it's hard to say where we are in the story. There isn't, the story just completely falls apart in the Torah. It's like a really well cooked, it's like something that's been cooked really well where it all kind of falls apart. And like that's how you know it's really good. That's kind of what the Torah is. It's been cooked so much that it's like it almost doesn't have a story in it. I mean, Leviticus. Oh my God, Leviticus just isn't a story. Leviticus is like, it's like, I don't know. I mean, it's like carnage and childbirth and like hungover, the hungover after the party, that weird feeling you get like when you go to have a festival or something. And like the day after you come back from some big social gathering that you've been at, like you're just like, where in the hell am I? Like I remember when I went to Burning Man, like on the way back from Burning Man, just that like sense of unreality. That's what Leviticus is. Leviticus is like, it's like the Burning Man of the Torah. Excuse me just a minute. Okay, there we go. So where was I? Oh yeah. So the point here is that this is like the what they're really trying to tell. So in Numbers, in the book of Numbers, it goes from year 1 to year 39 in the book. And it's a lot of chutzpah to think that they're trying to tell a story because I mean, for a long time when I was studying the Torah, I was just totally confused. I mean, there's no story. There's no story here. I need a storyline. I need to know what's going on. And it's like at this point in the story, one of their doctors thought, "Oh, we need to get back to telling the story because this kind of has a plot and it needs to have an ending." And these are all kind of new ideas. Like this is not the conventions of literature are still sort of being established. Like even after the Torah, even after the Tanakh, like we still don't really have like really firmly rooted ideas about how to write a good novel or how to put together a good book. It still takes another 1,000 years or so for us to get there. So we're not really there yet. But this is an interesting text, because it's a text that is at the crossroads between um it's a text that's at the crossroads between uh modernity and the ancient world, like the really ancient world, like going all the way back to the beginning of language and civilization. And there's not a lot of texts in the Western tradition that we have that like are still circulating today that are so deeply connected with like the origins of how we were trying to write texts and the origins of like where we were trying to do anything. So, everything in the Torah is really fascinating because it's all, relatively new in human history. I mean, it probably wasn't new for them in their time, but looking back at it now, it's so fresh. So, I mean, the only one, I mean, when I think of another text that's has a similar function, I mean, I would think of, you know, the Odyssey and the Iliad. I mean, Homer's Odysseus is like a text written not around exactly the same time, but pretty close. Oh, excuse me. Oh. Anyways, so what's going on here is this is literally just the first year since Sinai. So it's been a year since everybody escaped from the wilderness, escaped from slavery and walked through the waters. And like I said, you had the whole, like, I mean, you had the end of Exodus, which at the end of Exodus, it starts getting to become creepily like Leviticus. And almost literally the whole second half of Exodus is like Leviticus. And then you have Leviticus, which is like to me, Leviticus is the most Jewish text in the Torah. Like, if there's anything that makes you a Jew, it's Leviticus. Leviticus does it. I mean, the rest of the text does too, but Leviticus really defines what it means to be a Jew. And it's just, but then you get to Numbers, Bamidbar, and it feels like it's just more of the same. I mean, it's a slog. It's really a slog trying to get through this text. I mean, that's why if you can flavor it with anything, any kind of study, I mean, if you're even interested in it, because it's like on a straight read, like if you do a straight read on the surface of it, like from the 21st century, it just looks pretty bad. It just doesn't look that good. But when you really get into it and you see what's underneath everything, it's really interesting. Anyway, so this is just year one, and by the end of this book, we'll be in year 39. So just like 38 years just kind of disappeared. But I think that that's an interesting literary convention, though. I mean, I have to be honest that I actually think it's an interesting literary convention. I mean, to take a text and just be like, okay, I'm just going to take out 38 years. The only thing that matters about those 38 years is everybody died. Everybody died because of some stupid thing. You know, it's like it says some things. It says some things, and part of what's carried Jewish tradition over 2,300 years is that everything in the Torah for a Jew really says something. And the text has been worked over in so many ways that like it's like kneading dough. And it's like the text is like a giant ball of dough, and you just keep on kneading it over and over again. And so every part of it has something that Jews draw from. And there's a lot of it. Oh, sorry. I'm always doing this. I usually do these on Shabbat. Usually I do it either the evening of or the morning of. And I have to stay up late or get up early to do it because I have a really busy schedule. Anyway, so that's why I'm usually kind of sleepy when I do it. But the where was I going? I think I should just read some more. Okay, let's read a little bit more. Take a census of the whole Israelite community by the clans of its ancestral houses, listing the names of every male head by head. Okay, so what I read on this was, so the commentary in the Torah, the commentary um, on this Parsha says that the God, the God in the story already knows how many people there are. So the text says that the reason that this is in there, the commentary says, is because the God is counting the people because the God loves all the people so much. So that's the commentary. But what this really is this is just a simple literary convention for trying to, I mean, the text is trying to give a sense from the point of religious nationalism. The text is trying to give a sense of how great the nation was. I mean, this is one of the things that critics of biblical archaeology talk about all the time. They talk about so if you actually had this roving band of like 3 million people moving through the desert, going from one place to another, then there would be some kind of historical record of it. And I mean, there isn't really. I mean, there's the Hyksos. The Hyksos is certainly maybe a historical analogy, that there may be something in this story that's rooted in the story of the Hyksos, but there's nothing in the Torah that's specifically like there's 3 million Jews, and you could find evidence of their migration across the Levant, like the way that the story is written. And you know, that's like no big deal. So, the story is not written that way. I mean, it's obviously a made up story, so that's not really relevant. So, but what is relevant is what the story means to the people who are reading it at the time it was first written, and then what it's meant to people since then, too. And those are multiple overlapping layers of meaning. But I think what it means here to the redactors is they're trying to give, they're basically, it's like a fairy tale. They're saying, well, in the past, look at how great our nation was. Our nation is so huge. And they're basically trying to create um, an origin story that is a grand origin story. And so one of the things that I came across when I was doing my study this week for this Torah portion, and then I've come across many times before, is this theory that part of the reason that the text is the way it is because it belongs to a minor kingdom. And this minor kingdom, like, they're looking around at the other minor kingdoms around them. A lot of them are vassal states. They're states that have been conquered over and over many times, excuse me. They're states that have been conquered over and over many times. And they are trying to create these grand narrative texts to it's like a way it's kind of an egoic thing. It's like you're sort of propping up your identity. I mean, but it's really what it is I mean, for the Hasmoneans, and I think this, I mean, you can even look at the Romans. The Romans did the same thing. There was a time when the Romans were not, the all-powerful, pervasive, like, dominators of Western Europe, who we've inherited like the Western Christian tradition from. I mean, there was a time when the Romans were a small group of people, and they had their own origin story too. They weren't exactly a vassal state, but they weren't really, uh, you know, a, they weren't like this awful patriarchal force either. I mean, they used the same tools of empire that all the other ones did too. I mean, I've heard comparisons. Like, I've heard the Assyrians were the worst. Like, of all the ancient world, the Assyrians were the worst. But to me, they're all just brutal. They're all just like brutal, uh, just monsters. I mean, the entire history of these like dominating societies. I mean, and thankfully, Israel, for all of its faults, it was not one of those kind of societies. Israel did not like try to take over the entire known world at the time, and they didn't have a God who was like that anyways. I mean, Israel was very different. Israel was very much like the text was about, it's just us, it's the small group, this is what we're concerned with. I mean, they have a lot of chutzpah claiming that their God is like the God of all gods, but in a way they really don't. I mean, in a way what they're really saying is this is our God. That it's monolatry. It's like this is our God. All of those other people have their gods. It's just that our God is the greatest. It's pride. It's just it's affinity with your group. And it's like everybody does that. Everybody does affinity with their group. I mean, in order to not do that, you have to know that everybody already does that, and you have to train yourself not to do it, you know. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how to do it, but I'm really interested. You know, I'm definitely interested in learning how to not do it. Anyways, um, gosh, there's only like 5 minutes left. I don't know. I think I'm probably gonna wrap it up because I think I've settled a lot this Torah study portion. I mean, I've definitely commented on the text. Um, I think that in the future, I'm probably going to spend more time trying to learn about and talk about the history of atheism as like my own unique kind of cultural identity. And I'm going to continue commenting on the text. Anyways, I hope you'll read the text. It's a really interesting text. I mean, it's kind of a slog to get through, but it has some really interesting stuff in it. There's a whole thing in here about Aaron and the role that Aaron plays. Another thing I learned this week was that there isn't really any evidence of well, never mind. Anyways, you've been listening to Atheist Torah Study. Thanks so much for watching this if you happen to watch it all the way through. I seriously doubt anybody did, but if you did watch this all the way through, thanks so much for watching. And you can find this on TikTok, and I also have a blog on Medium. It's all the same thing. So it's all called Atheist Torah Study. And I think I'm the only person on earth doing this. So that's kind of unique. I'm doing something that nobody cares about, and I'm the only person doing it. So that's kind of fun. Anyways, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.